God's chosen one, unexpected meeting with God at 3 a.m. 1% chosen only divine wake-up. Have you ever been jolted awake at exactly 3 a.m. with your heart pounding like a drum in your chest? Have you felt an invisible presence calling your name in the dark when everyone else is sleeping? Why does God choose 3 a.m. to reach his chosen ones? Beloved, I need you to listen carefully to what I'm about to share. This isn't just another message, this is a divine interruption. The very fact that you found this video is confirmation that heaven has marked your file. You are being summoned. In my 50 years of ministry, I've discovered a sacred truth most believers will never understand. God speaks loudest when the world is silent. And 3 o'clock a.m., the fourth watch of the night, is when heaven's veil is thinnest. Scripture tells us in 1 Kings 19:12 that God speaks not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but in a still small voice. And where is that voice most clearly heard? In the stillness of night, when distractions fall away. The midnight interruption is no accident, it's divine selection. You see, only 1% of God's children are spiritually sensitive enough to perceive his 3 a.m. call. When you suddenly wake, with no explanation, with that strange stirring in your spirit, that's not insomnia. That's a summons from the throne room. Heaven's alarm clock isn't random, it's sacred. In Exodus, God passed through Egypt at midnight. In Acts, Paul and Silas were freed at midnight. In Matthew 25:6, the bridegroom arrived at midnight crying, "Come out to meet him." Listen to me closely. Your 3 a.m. awakening is not a coincidence, it's a calling card from the Almighty. Those unexplained moments of wakefulness are divine appointments being set in your spiritual calendar. Right now, I can sense some of you trembling because you've experienced this very thing and thought you were alone. You're not crazy. You're chosen. If you've ever been mysteriously awakened at 3 a.m. and felt God's presence, comment 333 below. Heaven is taking attendance, and your response is being recorded in the books of remembrance. The world calls it insomnia, but heaven calls it invitation. The enemy wants you distracted during the day, so God is claiming your night seasons. In those quiet, dark hours, when your defenses are down, God can finally speak to your unguarded heart. Tonight, prepare yourself. Set your spiritual alarm. What would happen if you met God at his appointed hour, instead of rolling over and missing the divine encounter? I want to thank every single one of you who has supported this ministry through Super Thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. The 3 a.m. call is coming. The question isn't whether God will show up, it's whether you'll be awake when he does. Why does the Almighty God of the universe choose to awaken you at precisely 3 a.m.? Why would the Creator of time itself interrupt your sleep when he has all of eternity at his disposal? And most profoundly, why you? These aren't casual questions, beloved. They cut to the very core of your divine purpose. Let me tell you something that might shock you. Those mysterious 3 a.m. awakenings aren't random disruptions. They are sacred appointments. In my 5 decades of ministry, I've counseled thousands of seniors just like you, who dismissed these moments as mere insomnia, only to later realize they had been standing on holy ground, with their spiritual shoes still on. You see, there's a chasm of difference between waking up and being awakened. Millions wake up every day, rushing into their routines, chasing medications, doctor's appointments, worrying about their retirement funds. But only 1%, the chosen ones, are divinely awakened. And contrary to what you might think, it's not because of your excellence, it's because of your assignment. In John 10:3, Jesus reveals this profound truth. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. Did you catch that? He calls his sheep by name. Your name isn't just what your parents decided to put on your birth certificate. Your name represents your divine identity, your heavenly assignment, the very purpose God breathed into your lungs on the day of your creation. When God awakens you at 3 a.m., He's not disturbing your rest. He's disrupting your complacency. He's reminding you that even in your 7th or 8th decade of life, your purpose isn't finished, your calling isn't complete, your impact isn't over. The prophet Samuel was just a boy when God called his name in the night. 3 times Samuel awoke, thinking it was Eli calling him. But it was the voice of the Almighty, preparing to download destiny into his young heart. And you, with your silver hair and life-weathered hands, you are no different. Age doesn't disqualify you from purpose. It qualifies you for greater wisdom in carrying it out. You weren't awakened to scroll through memories of yesterday. You were summoned to shift atmospheres today. Let that sink in for a moment. The enemy would have you believe that your most significant days are behind you, that your purpose diminished with your physical strength, that your calling expired with your career. But that's the greatest deception of our time. Moses was 80 years old when God called him from the burning bush. Abraham was 100 when he finally held the child of promise. Anna was well into her 80s when she prophesied over the infant Jesus in the temple. God doesn't waste midnight interruptions on those without assignment. When your eyes snap open at 3 a.m. and your heart races with unexplainable anticipation, heaven is downloading coordinates for your next spiritual assignment. The question isn't whether God is speaking, it's whether you're positioned to listen. Psalm 42:8 declares, "By day the Lord directs his love. At night his song is with me a prayer to the God of my life." Notice it doesn't say a prayer from the young or a song for the middle-aged. God's midnight song plays for every beating heart that's surrendered to his purpose, regardless of the candles on your last birthday cake. Some of you watching right now have been awakened night after night for weeks or even months. You've reached for the remote, you've adjusted your pillows, you've blamed it on your medications or that late cup of coffee. But deep in your spirit, you've sensed something more. Tonight, I'm confirming what your spirit already knows. You didn't just wake up, you were called up. Heaven has business with you that can't wait until morning. There are prayers that need praying, declarations that need speaking, and spiritual territories that need claiming, while the rest of the world sleeps. Why you? Because in the economy of heaven, you're not defined by your social security number, but by your spiritual sensitivity. You're not valued for your retirement portfolio, but for your readiness to respond when heaven calls your name. The 1% aren't chosen because they're perfect, they're chosen because they're available. In Ezekiel 22:30, God says, "I looked for someone among them who would build up the wall and stand before me in the gap on behalf of the land, so I would not have to destroy it, but I found no one." What a heartbreaking statement from the heart of God. He searched and found no one willing to answer the midnight call. Will you be that one? Will you recognize that your 3 a.m. awakening isn't a burden, but a blessing? Will you understand that when heaven interrupts your night, it's because destiny can't wait until morning? Your response to the midnight call might just be the tipping point between blessing and judgment, between revival and decline, between heaven's intervention and heaven's silence. So the next time your eyes open at 3 a.m., don't reach for your phone, reach for his presence. Don't check the time, check your spirit. Because in that sacred moment, between midnight and morning, between sleep and awareness, God is extending an invitation that only 1% will recognize. Are you among them? In the stillness of this moment, I must reveal something profound to you. Something that explains why you've always felt different. why you've never quite fit in with the crowd. There are marks upon your soul, divine fingerprints that separate the 1% from everyone else. Have you ever wondered why you feel things others don't feel? Why you sense things others can't perceive? Why your spirit seems to catch signals that fly right past everyone else? This is not coincidence. This is consecration. The first mark of the chosen ones is a sensitivity that defies logic. When you walk into a room, you don't just see people, you feel their pain. You don't just hear words, you discern intentions. This gift isn't learned, it's imprinted on your spirit by the hand of God Himself. I've counseled thousands of elderly saints over 5 decades, and I've witnessed this supernatural sensitivity in action. You know things you shouldn't know. You feel burdens that aren't your own. Your dreams sometimes come true. Your hunches prove right more often than wrong. The world calls this intuition, but heaven calls it divine discernment. In 1 Corinthians 2:15, Paul writes, "The person with the Spirit makes judgments about all things, but such a person is not subject to merely human judgments." This is you, precious one. This is why you've sometimes felt crazy, when you're actually just spiritually attuned. The second mark is sacred isolation. Now this might hurt, but I need you to hear me. Those seasons of loneliness, those painful rejections, those years when you felt abandoned, they weren't punishment, they were protection. God deliberately set you apart, like He did with Moses in Midian, like He did with David in the caves, like He did with John the Baptist in the wilderness. You were never alone, you were being preserved. Your isolation wasn't a prison, it was preparation. How many of you, in your golden years, now look back and understand that your loneliest seasons were actually your most formative? Those desert places carved depths in you that shallow fellowship never could. Your tears were not wasted, they were collected. Psalm 56:8 tells us that God keeps our tears in His bottle. Every moment of isolation was heaven's investment in your character. Every rejection from men was protection from divine purpose. Thieves. The third mark, perhaps the most powerful, is discernment without evidence. You just know things without logical explanation. You can sense deception beneath polished presentations. You can feel danger before it arrives. You detect spiritual atmospheres that others walk through completely unaware. Like Elisha, who could see and hear enemy battle plans from miles away, you perceive realities beyond the 5 senses. This isn't imagination, it's revelation. This isn't anxiety, it's spiritual alertness. Has your family ever called you too cautious? Have your friends dismissed your warnings? Have your children rolled their eyes when you said, "Something doesn't feel right about this"? That's because only 1% carry this mark of heavenly perception. These 3 mark supernatural sensitivity, divine isolation, and discernment without evidence set you apart from the crowd. Not because you're better, but because you're called. Not because you're special, but because you're selected. This explains why you've always felt like an outsider looking in, why you've wrestled with belonging, why you've sensed a higher purpose, even when your daily life seemed mundane. You were never meant to blend in, you were designed to stand out. At this very moment, I can sense some of you trembling, tears forming in your eyes, a knot tightening in your throat. That reaction is confirmation. Your spirit recognizes truth when it hears it. If these words are piercing your heart, I need you to make a declaration right now. Place your hand over your heart and say, "I carry the marks of heaven." Say it again, "I carry the marks of heaven." Your age is not a limitation, it's a qualification. You've walked longer with these marks than most. You've endured more because of them. You've been refined by them. Now it's time to embrace them fully. But beloved, I must warn you, these marks come with grave responsibility. When heaven tattoos your soul with divine sensitivity, it's not just for your benefit, it's for a mission that's unfolding even now. These marks are just the beginning of what God is revealing. They explain your past, but they don't fully illuminate your future. That revelation is coming in what I'm about to share next. To those who have supported this ministry through super thanks, I feel a divine obligation to express my deepest gratitude. Your generosity isn't just funding a message, it's fueling a movement. Whether you give financially or simply give your attention, you're participating in something eternal. The marks upon your soul are undeniable, but the mission attached to them is just beginning to unfold. What happens when the 1% chosen finally understand why they've been marked? What cosmic shift occurs when heaven's selected ones step fully into their assignment? That revelation is what we must explore next. There's a pain inside you that no one else can see. A wound so deep, it's become part of your identity. You've mastered the art of crying without tears, smiling while collapsing inside. Haven't you? Tell me, chosen one, how many nights have you lain awake, wondering if God has forgotten you? How many prayers have evaporated into silence while you whispered, "Lord, are you still there?" This is not just ordinary suffering, this is sacred refinement. The world looks at you and sees someone holding it together, but God sees the invisible battles you fight every single night at 3 a.m., when there are no witnesses except heaven itself. David knew this pain intimately. In Psalm 142:4, he cried out, "Look to my right and see, no one is concerned for me. I have no refuge, no one cares for my life." Can you feel the weight of those words? The King of Israel, hiding in a dark cave, utterly alone. Yet it was in that cave that David composed some of Scripture's most powerful psalms. His agony became our comfort, his darkness became our light. Your pain is following this same divine pattern. Joseph spent 13 years moving from betrayal to slavery to prison. 13 years of wondering why God had abandoned the dream he himself had given. Have you ever felt that way, chosen one? Have you ever questioned if you misunderstood God's promise because the reality looks nothing like what you expected? What looks like abandonment is actually assignment. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness, feeling forgotten by God. 40 years, can you imagine? From Prince of Egypt to desert shepherd, tending animals that weren't even his own. Each passing year, another layer of his ego burned away, until all that remained was a man humble enough to carry divine authority. Listen to me closely. There is purpose in your pain. Your tears are watering seeds of purpose that ordinary believers will never understand. When metal is being forged into a masterpiece, it must first endure the fire. The blacksmith doesn't thrust it into flames out of cruelty, but out of vision. He sees what that metal can become and knows the fire is the only way to get it there. You were forged in a fire others never survived. That anxiety that keeps you up at night, that's not your weakness, that's your sensitivity to heaven's frequency. That loneliness that follows you into crowded rooms, that's not rejection, that's separation for divine purpose. Your scars are not symbols of defeat, they are sacred scrolls. Your pain is not your punishment, it's your proof. In 2 Corinthians 4:17, Paul reminds us, "For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all." Light and momentary? It hardly feels that way when you're in the middle of the fire. But God operates on a different timeline, where the worst chapters of your life become the most powerful testimonies of His faithfulness. I've counseled thousands of seniors just like you, men and women who thought their best years were behind them, who believed they had missed God's timing. But I'm here to tell you, with tears in my eyes, that at 60, at 70, at 80 years old, God is just getting started with you. The fire in your spirit, that refuses to die despite every reason to give up, is not your own doing. It's the fingerprint of God, preserving you for this exact moment in history. Look at Abraham. When did God activate his purpose? At 75 years old. Sarah laughed when God promised her a child at 90. She laughed. But God wasn't joking. What seemed impossible was merely setting the stage for a miracle. Your age is not your expiration, it's your qualification. Every betrayal, every disappointment, every unanswered prayer has been carefully calibrated to prepare you for the 3 a.m. encounter that awaits you tonight. The enemy has convinced some of you that your tears signal defeat. But in the kingdom economy, tears are liquid prayers. They don't dissolve into your pillow. They rise like incense before the throne of God. That fire you feel, it's not burnout. It's breakthrough pressing against the door of your spirit. Tonight at 3 a.m., God is scheduling a divine appointment with you. He's coming to explain why you've carried this invisible weight for so long, why your heart still aches for things you cannot name, why you feel so different from those around you. Don't you dare sleep through this appointment. Don't medicate it away. Don't dismiss that sacred stirring as mere insomnia. If your spirit is on fire right now, if these words are burning into your soul, comment "Refiner's fire" below. Let heaven know you understand. Let the enemy know you recognize God's hand in your hardest seasons. What if tonight is when God finally reveals why the fire has burned so long? What if 3 a.m. is when your purpose is finally revealed? The clock reads 3:17 a.m. and something has stirred you from sleep. Your eyes open to darkness, but your spirit is wide awake. You heard your name, clear as daylight in the midnight hour, and yet no one else in the house is stirring. Have you been there, beloved? Has your soul ever recognized a voice that your ears couldn't quite capture? This is no ordinary awakening. This is the divine whisper. In 1 Kings 19:11-13, the prophet Elijah stood on the mountain, waiting for God. A powerful wind tore through, shattering rocks, but God wasn't in the wind. Then came an earthquake, shaking the very foundation beneath him, but God wasn't in the earthquake. Next came fire, blazing across the mountain, but God wasn't in the fire either. And then, after all the dramatic displays of power, came a gentle whisper, so faint, Elijah had to wrap his face in his cloak and step forward to hear it. In that whisper, God finally spoke. Why does the creator of thunder and lightning choose to speak in whispers at 3 a.m.? Because he's not trying to reach everyone, he's trying to reach you. In America today, we're drowning in noise. Our phones ping, our TVs blare, our minds race with worries about retirement, health concerns, children who've drifted away. By day, we're too distracted to hear the still, small voice. But at 3 a.m., when the world grows quiet, God finally has your undivided attention. The midnight whisper isn't random, it's reserved. Think about Samuel in the temple, just a boy, hearing his name called in the night. 3 times he ran to Eli, saying, "Here I am, you called me." But it wasn't Eli calling. It was God, initiating a relationship that would change Israel forever. Could it be that the stirring you felt in the night is the same God calling your name? Your neighbors won't understand this. Your doctor might prescribe sleeping pills. Your family might suggest cutting back on coffee. They're looking for physical explanations for a spiritual encounter. But you know differently, don't you? If your soul has ever responded to silence, if you've ever felt compelled to pray at strange hours, if you've ever known things without being told you're one of the few, the 1% who can hear what others miss. I need you to understand something profound tonight. That whisper you heard, it wasn't your imagination. It wasn't your subconscious. It wasn't random neurons firing in your aging brain. That whisper wasn't your thought, it was your instruction. God doesn't wake his chosen ones to make small talk. He wakes them with assignments, with warnings, with strategies that will alter the course of yours and countless others. When David heard God's whisper, he defeated Goliath. When Esther heard it, she saved a nation. When Mary heard it, she changed human history. What might happen if you finally responded to your 3 a.m. calling? I can sense some of you right now, trembling as you listen. You know exactly what I'm talking about, because it happened to you last night, or last week, or last month. You woke up with a name on your heart, someone you hadn't thought about in years. That wasn't coincidence. That was a divine appointment being scheduled. Or perhaps you jolted awake with a solution to a problem that had tormented you for months. That wasn't your subconscious working overtime. That was heaven downloading wisdom directly into your spirit. Some of you woke with an urgency to pray, though you didn't know why. Later, you discovered your grandchild was in trouble at that exact moment. Your midnight prayer became their midnight miracle. This is the reality of the divine whisper, and why so few experience it. It requires sensitivity that most have lost. It demands obedience few are willing to give. It calls for sacrifice of comfort, of sleep, of normalcy. Are you willing to pay that price, to hear what heaven is whispering? I want to thank each one of you who has supported this ministry through Super Thanks. Your generosity isn't just financial, it's spiritual, sowing seeds that will yield eternal harvests. Whether you give or simply listen, you're part of this divine conversation. In these sacred night hours, heaven's intelligence agency is active. While the world slumbers, God's chosen ones receive their assignments. The question isn't whether God is speaking, it's whether anyone is listening. The next time you wake at 3 a.m., don't reach for your phone. Don't turn on the television. Don't count sheep or pop a pill. Instead, whisper back to the darkness, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening," because what follows that simple invitation might just change everything. What message might be waiting for you in tonight's whisper? There's a war raging inside you right now, and most nights, it keeps you awake long after the rest of the world has fallen asleep. I'm talking about the battle between who God says you are and who you've always believed yourself to be. Let me ask you something, dear one. Have you ever looked in the mirror and not recognized the person staring back at you? Have you ever wondered where that fire in your eyes went? When did the light start to dim? You were dying in plain sight, and nobody noticed. The Apostle Paul understood this battle intimately. In Galatians 5:17, he writes, "For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with each other." This isn't just ancient wisdom, this is the war happening in your soul at 3 a.m. Your old self is fighting desperately to survive, clinging to familiar pain, because at least pain is predictable. Your old self whispers, "Who do you think you are? You're too old, too broken, too late." But God, oh beloved, God is whispering something entirely different. I've counseled thousands of seniors just like you, who thought their best days were behind them. Sarah was 76 when God called her to start a prayer ministry that now spans 17 states. Robert was 82 when he finally published the book God had placed on his heart 40 years earlier. They almost missed their divine appointments because they listened to the old self instead of the new creation God declared them to be. The enemy's greatest strategy isn't to make you sin, it's to make you settle, to convince you that your age disqualifies you from your calling. Nothing could be further from heaven's truth. Remember Moses? He was 80 years old when he stood before the burning bush. 8 decades of life behind him, and God was just getting started with him. The Bible doesn't say, "Now Moses was too old, so God found someone younger." No, it says God called him, despite his objections, despite his self-doubt. Here's what's really happening at 3 a.m. God isn't just waking you up, he's waking up the giant inside you that's been sleeping far too long. Let me speak directly to your spirit right now. That voice telling you it's too late, that's not wisdom, that's fear. That feeling that you've missed your chance, that's not reality, that's a lie. I remember sitting with Eleanor, an 85-year-old widow who told me through tears, "Pastor, I feel God calling me to something, but at my age, what could he possibly want from me?" 6 months later, she was leading a healing ministry for other widows that transformed her entire community. She told me, "I was one person for 85 years, and God made me someone entirely new in just one night." The battle isn't against your age, it's against your identity. When you wake at 3 a.m., it's because the new creation in you is rising up, refusing to let the old you maintain control for one more day. 2 Corinthians 5:17 declares, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come, the old has gone, the new is here." But here's the brutal truth that few will tell you. The old you must die before the new you can truly live. Remember what Jesus said in John 12:24. "Unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed, but if it dies, it produces many seeds." Your greatest impact, your most profound purpose, is still waiting to be birthed, but first, there must be a death. I've seen it too many times to count. The moment a believer surrenders their old identity, their limitations, their excuse, heaven moves with supernatural speed. Doors that were locked for decades suddenly swing open. Divine connections appear out of nowhere. Purpose floods in like a tidal wave. Why do you think you keep waking up at 3 a.m.? Because the old you wants to sleep, but the new you is demanding to be acknowledged. The flesh wants comfort, but the spirit craves purpose. Some of you have been fighting this battle for years. You've nearly given up dozens of times. You've questioned your sanity, your faith, your very hearing of God's voice. But something kept that tiny flame alive, didn't it? Something wouldn't let you completely surrender to complacency. That something wasn't your willpower, it was God's Spirit, refusing to let you settle. Tonight, when that 3 a.m. appointment comes, I want you to recognize it for what it truly is. Not insomnia, but invitation. Not disruption, but destiny. It's heaven saying, "The old season is over. A new day is dawning." If you're ready to silence the old you once and for all, to embrace who God says you are regardless of your age or circumstances, comment below. I am no longer who I was, I am who He says I am. The battle between you and the old you ends the moment you decide which voice to believe. And beloved, that decision will determine everything about what happens next in your life. So tell me, which version of yourself will you bring to tomorrow's dawn? Beloved, this is not just a message. This is an alarm in the spirit realm. Heaven is sounding a trumpet over your life, and only those with spiritual ears can hear it. I need you to understand something profound right now. Those 3 a.m. awakenings aren't random disruptions of your sleep. They are divine appointments being set by the King of Kings. When your eyes snap open in the darkness, it's because God Himself has whispered your name. Let me ask you something that might shake you to your core. What if every night you've tossed and turned at 3 a.m. wasn't insomnia at all? What if it was God trying desperately to get your attention while you reached for sleeping pills and missed the divine encounter? The thought is almost too devastating to consider. In Exodus 12:29, we read, "At midnight, the Lord struck down all the firstborn in Egypt." Midnight wasn't just a time marker, it was God's chosen moment for deliverance. In Acts 16:25-26, it was at midnight that Paul and Silas prayed, and suddenly there was an earthquake that shook the prison foundations. The midnight hour has always been God's revelation time. Seniors, You've walked with the Lord for decades. You've seen revivals come and go. But I prophesy to you today that God is doing something new with your night seasons. He's not done with you. Your age isn't a limitation, it's a qualification. The next 7 days will shape the next 7 years of your life. I'm not speaking metaphorically, I'm speaking prophetically. What you do with this divine wake-up call in the coming week will determine whether you enter your greatest season of impact or miss the heavenly visitation meant specifically for you. Let that sink in for a moment. You weren't created just to pay bills and die. You weren't saved just to attend church and wait for heaven. You are not here to survive. You are here to shift atmospheres. You are not here to blend in. You are here to stand out. Even now, in your 60s, 70s, 80s and beyond, God is positioning you as a spiritual gatekeeper in your family. While others sleep, you're being stationed as a watchman on the wall. Do you realize what's happening? Those sleepless nights aren't attacking your rest. They're activating your purpose. When God wakes you at 3 a.m., He's not being inconsiderate of your need for sleep. He's being considerate of a dying world's need for your prayers. I sense in my spirit that some of you have been asking God, "Why me? Why now? I'm too old for new assignments." But Psalm 92:14 declares, "They will still bear fruit in old age. They will stay fresh and green." Your age isn't disqualifying you, it's qualifying you for this sacred assignment. Samuel heard God's voice in the night, and it launched a prophetic ministry that changed a nation. Ruth made a midnight decision that placed her in the lineage of Christ. Gideon received his battle strategy in the night watches. What will your 3 a.m. legacy be? Let me be brutally honest with you. The enemy has tried to convince you that your random awakenings are just a normal part of aging. That's a lie straight from the pit of hell. Your 3 a.m. wasn't a disruption, it was the divine activation. In Joel 2:28, God promises, "I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your old men will dream dreams." Those aren't just sweet dreams of nostalgia, they're strategic visions for kingdom advancement. The dreams God is releasing to the seniors in this hour are blueprints for generational impact. The younger generation knows how to use technology, but you know how to touch heaven. They have information, but you have revelation. They have platforms, but you have authority. 7 days. 7 divine appointments await you. Starting tonight, when your eyes open at 3 a.m., don't reach for your phone. Don't turn on the television. Instead, whisper back to heaven, "Speak, Lord. Your servant is listening." This is more than a message. This is a commissioning. This is your spiritual alarm clock, and heaven is taking attendance. I want you to make a decision right now, a holy determination. Type in the comments below, "This is my wake-up moment." Not as a social media engagement, but as a sacred declaration before the courts of heaven that you will not miss another 3 a.m. appointment. To those who have supported this ministry through Super Thanks, I want you to know that your seed is falling on fertile ground. You're not just supporting a message, you're fueling a movement of midnight intercessors who will shift the spiritual atmosphere over our nation. Whether you give or not, I honor your presence here, knowing that God directed your path to this very moment. Tonight, as you lay your head on your pillow, whisper this prayer, "Lord, I'm listening. Wake me if you need me." Then, watch what happens at 3 a.m. The midnight hour is no longer just about sleep. It's about awakening to your highest calling. Are you ready for your divine wake-up call? Listen carefully now, because what I'm about to reveal isn't just another spiritual insight. This is a prophetic declaration, directly from the throne room of heaven, to you. In the next 72 hours, God is aligning cosmic forces in your favor. Not next month, not someday, but within the next 3 days. The divine stopwatch has already started ticking. Have you been standing before your own Jericho wall for far too long? That imposing barrier of financial hardship, that relationship that seems irreparable, that health condition the doctors call permanent. God has heard your midnight cries. Let me take you back to Joshua chapter 6, when God's people faced impossible walls. Those walls of Jericho weren't just tall, they were impenetrable. Military experts would have called Joshua's strategy absurd. March around silently for 6 days, then shout on the 7th. What kind of battle plan is that? But here's what most Christians miss. The wall did not fall by human strength. It wasn't demolished by battering rams, or siege weapons, or military might. Those massive stone barriers collapsed at the sound of obedient faith. Your Jericho walls are waiting for your obedience right now. I can sense some of you pushing back, thinking, I've been faithful for years, and my walls are still standing. But hear me clearly, it's not about duration, it's about divine timing. The Israelites could have marched for 40 years, but the walls only fell when they shouted at God's appointed moment. Let me ask you something that might sting. How many divine appointments have you slept through? How many 3 a.m. calls have you dismissed as just insomnia? How many heavenly nudges have you ignored because they didn't fit your schedule? At 76 years old, I've counseled thousands of seniors who shared the same heartbreaking regret. I knew God was calling me to something, but I hit the spiritual snooze button. I refuse to let you make that same mistake. 3 days from now, something will shift in the spirit realm concerning your situation, but only if you position yourself correctly. Think about Ruth, who positioned herself at Boaz's feet. Think about the woman with the issue of blood, who positioned herself to touch the hem of Jesus' garment. Think about Esther, who positioned herself before the king for such a time as this. Where is God asking you to position yourself? The Lord spoke this to me so clearly at 3 a.m. last Tuesday. I physically trembled. My children keep asking me to move their mountains when I've already given them the faith to command those mountains themselves. Matthew 17:20 doesn't say, "If you have faith, I will move the mountain for you." No, Jesus said, "If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move." You've been waiting on God, while God has been waiting on you. In Exodus 14:15, when Moses stood at the Red Sea crying out for divine intervention, God responded with a question that echoes through the centuries. "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on." Some of you have been standing at your Red Sea for decades, praying for waters to part, when God is saying, "Why are you still standing there? Move forward." I feel a holy urgency to tell you, the wall will fall, but only if you walk when He says move. The sea will part, but only when your feet get wet. The manna will come, but only if you go out to gather it. These next 72 hours are critical. Angels are being positioned, circumstances are being arranged, divine connections are being established. But they hinge on your response to the 3 a.m. call. What keeps you from rising when heaven beckons? Is it comfort, doubt, fear of looking foolish? Remember, the Israelites probably felt ridiculous marching around Jericho day after day, but their obedience unlocked their miracle. I want you to do something right now. Take out a pen and paper and write these words: "I will not sleep on my destiny again." Say it out loud with me. I will not sleep on my destiny again. This isn't just a declaration, it's a covenant between you and God. When the 3 a.m. call comes, you will answer. When the still small voice whispers, you will listen. When the divine nudge comes, you will move. I want to thank those who support this ministry through Super Thanks. Your generosity isn't just helping a ministry, it's helping awaken God's chosen ones all over this nation. Whether you give or not, know that your presence here matters. You're not watching this by accident. The walls of Jericho in your life are already beginning to crack. The foundations are trembling. All heaven is watching to see if you'll give the shout of faith when God says, "Now." The question isn't whether God can perform the miracle. The question is, will you be awake when He calls? The time has come, chosen one. This is the divine moment, when everything changes. For years, you've been sleeping through your destiny. Your spirit has been restless, reaching for something you couldn't name, while others sleep soundly, satisfied with a lukewarm faith. You've been tossing and turning, sensing there must be more, and you were right. Do you realize what's been happening to you? Those 3 a.m. awakenings aren't random disruptions, they are divine invitations. Heaven has been calling your number, while 99% of believers hit the spiritual snooze button. But not you, not anymore. Look at Moses at the burning bush, when God called his name twice. "Moses, Moses," he answered, "Here I am." That single moment of divine response changed the course of an entire nation. Your 3 a.m. moment carries the same weight, the same destiny, the same authority. Let me tell you something powerful that might shock you to your core. You're not waiting on confirmation from God. You are the confirmation. Your awakening is the evidence. Your restlessness is the proof. Your hunger is the testimony. When heaven marked you, it wasn't because you were perfect. It was because you were chosen. In Matthew 22:14, Jesus declared, "Many are called, but few are chosen." Do you understand? The call goes out to many, but only the 1% respond. Only the 1% rise. Think about Gideon's army. God reduced 32,000 men down to just 300. That's less than 1%. Why? Because God doesn't need numbers. He needs obedience. He doesn't need the masses. He needs the faithful few who will show up when He calls. Can I be brutally honest with you right now? The reason your life hasn't shifted yet is because you've been waiting for permission to become who you already are. You've been sitting in the shadow of your calling while heaven has been shouting your name. The 1% is not a number, it is a spiritual level. It's the difference between those who visit the presence of God and those who live there. It's the difference between those who pray occasionally and those who position themselves at 3 a.m. when heaven's veil is thinnest. I need you, right now, wherever you are, to physically stand up. Yes, actually stand up, because something supernatural happens when your body aligns with your spirit. Now, with your feet firmly planted, repeat these words from Isaiah 60:1. Arise, shine, for my light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon me. Can you feel that? That surge of holy electricity moving through your body? That's not emotion, that's activation. That's heaven's current, flowing through a vessel that's finally positioned to receive. For too long, you've been drowning in a sea of spiritual mediocrity. The American church has sold you a comfortable gospel that demands nothing and delivers even less. The 99% are content with Sunday sermons and bedtime prayers, but you were made for midnight encounters and throne room revelations. You've sensed it, haven't you? That nagging feeling that you're missing something, that spiritual ache that won't be satisfied with religious routines. That's the DNA of the 1%, stirring within you. Samuel was just a boy when God called his name at night. David was just a shepherd when God marked him for kingship. Esther was just an orphan when God positioned her to save a nation. What makes you think you're any different? The enemy has worked overtime to convince you that your 3 a.m. awakening is meaningless, that your spiritual sensitivity is weakness, that your divine discontent is dysfunction. He's lied to you because he fears what happens when you finally answer the call. Tonight, a holy line is being drawn in the spiritual realm. On one side stand the 99% comfortable, complacent, content with crumbs from heaven's table. On the other side stand the 1% awakened, alert, answering the midnight call. Which side will you choose? I feel a prophetic declaration rising up within me. The Spirit is saying, "The midnight hour has come for my chosen ones. I am separating those who sleep from those who seek. I am dividing those who wait from those who watch. This is the hour of divine distinction. Together, let us declare as the 1%. I was awakened not by chance, but by choice. I was called, not because I am perfect, but because I am purposed. I now rise as one of the 1%, breaking from spiritual slumber. I receive my divine appointment at 3 a.m. and beyond. My midnight oil will not run dry, my lamp will not go out. I am the watchman, the seeker, the chosen. I am the 1%. Heaven is applauding. The angels are witnessing. The ancient cloud of witnesses is testifying. You, chosen one, have just crossed over. Your 3 a.m. appointment has become your 24-hour assignment. No more waiting, no more wondering, no more wavering. The rise of the 1% has begun, and you are standing at its forefront. What will you do with this sacred awakening? My dear friends, applying the 3 a.m. principle to your daily walk isn't just about literal midnight encounters, it's about cultivating a lifestyle of divine alertness in a spiritually drowsy age. Let me share something I've observed through 5 decades of ministry that might transform how you navigate these challenging times. The midnight call isn't confined to dark bedrooms and silent houses. It's a spiritual posture you can carry throughout your day. In our modern American culture, where distraction has become a national addiction, the ability to hear God's whisper amid the noise is perhaps the most valuable spiritual skill you can develop. When your phone pings with notifications, when cable news blares with the latest crisis, when family demands and financial pressures compete for your attention, these are your daytime opportunities to practice the 3 a.m. principle. Ask yourself, can I create a sacred pause in this ordinary Tuesday afternoon? Can I step away from the checkout line mentally for just 30 seconds to attune my spirit to heaven's frequency? The elderly saints I've counseled who mastered this practice didn't just survive their later years, they thrived with supernatural vitality that defied their physical limitations. Consider establishing what I call portable sanctuaries, brief moments throughout your day when you mentally step into God's presence regardless of your physical location. Perhaps it's during your morning coffee before the grandchildren arrive, or those 15 minutes in the doctor's waiting room, or even sitting in traffic on the Long Island Expressway. These micro appointments with God accumulate into a life marked by divine sensitivity. I've noticed something remarkable about the 1% of believers who practice this discipline. They develop what Scripture calls an ear to hear. They recognize divine setups that others dismiss as coincidences. That chance meeting in the grocery store, that unexpected delay that frustrated your plans, that random thought about someone you haven't seen in years. These might be heaven's 2 p.m. appointments disguised as ordinary interruptions. Don't fall into the trap of compartmentalizing your spiritual life to Sunday mornings or pre-dawn prayer times. The God who speaks at 3 a.m. is the same God who wants to guide your retirement decisions, heal your family relationships, and bring wisdom to your health challenges today. The midnight oil you're cultivating must fuel your everyday interactions. In my counseling of seniors across America, I've observed that those who apply this principle experience 4 remarkable benefits. First, they report significantly less anxiety about world events because they've learned to filter headlines through heaven's perspective. Second, they enjoy richer relationships because they discern divine appointments with strangers and family members alike. Third, they demonstrate unusual clarity about major life decisions because they've trained themselves to recognize God's voice amid competing opinions. Finally, They maintain spiritual vitality long after their physical strength begins to wane. Most importantly, remember that the midnight calling is never about spiritual elitism. Being among the 1% doesn't make you better than others, it makes you responsible for others. Like the watchmen on ancient city walls, your heightened spiritual awareness isn't for personal gratification, it's for community protection. When God shows you something in your midnight moment, ask Him, "Who needs this revelation besides me? Who should I call? Who needs encouragement? What burden am I seeing that others might be missing?" The greatest tragedy isn't missing your own 3 a.m. appointment. It's failing to deliver the message that appointment was meant to provide for someone else. In a nation where many of our fellow seniors have resigned themselves to spiritual retirement, you carry the torch of multi-generational impact. Your sensitivity might be the very thing that awakens your grandchildren to their own divine calling. So tomorrow morning, when you rise and begin your day, whisper this simple prayer: "Lord, make me as alert at noon as I would be at midnight. Let me hear your voice in the checkout line as clearly as I would in my prayer closet. Help me recognize your appointments disguised as interruptions." This practice, sustained over weeks and months, will transform not just your spiritual life, but your entire experience of aging. The 1% in every generation weren't just mystics who heard God at midnight. They were practical saints who brought heaven's perspective to earth's problems. That legacy now falls to you. Will you carry it forward? Beloved, as we close this sacred moment together, I want to remind you of what the Lord has revealed to us today. The 3 a.m. awakening is not random, it is royal. It is heaven's appointment book, opening specifically for you. Your midnight stirring is not insomnia, it is invitation. When God selects the 1%, He does so not because of perfection, but because of perception, your spiritual sensitivity to hear what others cannot. Remember these 3 truths we've uncovered together. First, your awakening is divine selection. God has marked you for a purpose that extends beyond your understanding. Second, the midnight hour is sacred ground. When heaven whispers at 3 a.m., it's because the crowd has gone quiet, and God can finally speak to your unguarded heart. Third, your response determines your reality. The difference between the 99% and the 1% is not gifting, it's obedience. I want you to know something profound, something that has sustained me through 50 years of ministry. You are not alone in this journey. Even when you rise at 3 a.m. and the world sleeps around you, you are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. There are believers across this nation, from New York to California, from Minneapolis to Houston, who are rising at the same hour, answering the same call. This community, right here, stands ready to hold your hand through the midnight watches. The comment section below isn't just a forum, it's a prayer circle. Share your 3 a.m. encounters. Tell us how God has met you in the midnight hour. Ask your questions, voice your doubts. This is holy ground, and we walk it together. I must ask you, will you answer when heaven calls your name? Will you rise when others sleep? Will you be counted among the 1% who don't just visit God's presence, but live there? Let us pray together now, as I place my hand spiritually on your shoulder. Father God, Master of midnight moments and keeper of divine appointments, I pray for my precious brother or sister watching right now. You have called them by name. You have awakened them from spiritual slumber. You have marked them as one of the 1%. Lord, I ask that you would seal this revelation in their spirit. When the alarm sounds at 3 a.m., give them supernatural strength to rise. When doubts whisper that they're imagining things, silence those lies with your truth. When the enemy suggests they're alone in this journey, surround them with evidence of your presence. Touch them now, right where they are. Release fresh oil for their midnight lamp. Renew their strength like the eagles. Make their spiritual ears sensitive to your still small voice. For those facing impossible situations, be their midnight deliverer. For those carrying heavy burdens, be their burden bearer. For those walking through the valley of decision, be their guiding light. Lord, establish a covenant between you and your chosen one watching this video. When they call, answer them. When they seek, let them find you. When they knock, open doors that no man can shut. We declare that from this day forward, the 3 a.m. appointment will be kept sacred. The midnight oil will not run dry. The watchmen will not abandon their post. In Jesus' mighty name, we pray. Amen. If this message has touched your heart today, please don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs divine awakening. Someone right now is hitting the spiritual snooze button, missing heaven's appointment. Your testimony might be their wake-up call. I'd be deeply honored if you'd take a moment to subscribe to this channel. Each week, we dive into biblical truths that challenge the comfortable and awaken the called. Your subscription isn't just a button click, it's a statement that you're hungry for more than surface spirituality. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for staying with me through this entire message. Your time is precious, and the fact that you've invested it here tells me something profound about your spiritual hunger. You are truly among the 1%, not by accident, but by assignment. Until our next divine appointment, may the God who whispers at midnight keep your lamp burning bright and your spirit ever responsive to his voice. The midnight call is coming. Will you answer?